The first crack in my perfect life appeared not with a bang, but with a scent. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were the most mundane of days, trapped between the potential of Monday and the looming relief of Friday. I was arranging a bouquet of white lilies in the vast, minimalist living room of our Pacific Heights townhouse. My hands, once stained with ink and vibrant with the energy of creation, now performed these simple, decorative tasks with a quiet efficiency that belied the growing emptiness within. The click of the key in the lock came at 11:47 p.m. I didn't need to look at the clock. My body had become attuned to the rhythms of his absences. Mark entered, a whirlwind of cold night air and expensive cologne. He dropped his briefcase by the door with a heavy thud that echoed in the sterile space. "Long one," he mumbled, already shrugging off his Brioni overcoat, not even looking at me. I moved to greet him, to take the coat, to perform the wifely ritual. As I did, I leaned in, intending to brush a kiss against his cheek, and that's when I smelled it. Beneath the familiar notes of sandalwood and whiskey, there was something else. A fragrance. Sweet, cloying, aggressively fruity. The kind of cheap, youthful perfume that spoke of impulse buys at a mall counter. It was utterly alien to the sophisticated, citrus and sandalwood scent I associated with the formidable women in his professional circle. My hand froze on the lapel of his coat. He felt my stillness. "What is it, Lena?" His voice was tired, edged with impatience. "Your collar," I said, my voice softer than I intended. I felt like a fool even saying it. "There's a smell, perfume." He laughed, a short, dismissive bark that grated against the quiet of the room. "God, you're paranoid. It's the new air freshener Isabella had installed in all the executive cars. Some vanilla bullshit thing. It's nauseating. I'll have to talk to her about it tomorrow." He cupped my face, his thumb stroking my cheek. The gesture felt practiced, a performance of intimacy. "You need to stop watching those true crime shows, my love. You're imagining things." For a moment, the old Alina, the one who had supported him through a decade of struggle and success, wanted to believe him. She wanted to chastise herself for her suspicion. But a newer, harder part of me, a part that had been growing in the quiet solitude of this beautiful cage, remained frozen. The gaslighting, once a subtle mist, was now a thick fog, and I was determined not to get lost in it. I said nothing. I simply hung up his coat and watched him head to the kitchen, already scrolling through his phone. I went to bed, lying stiffly beside his soon-to-be snoring form, the ghost of that cheap perfume haunting the inches of space between us. That night, I didn't dream. I just stared at the ceiling, the word paranoid echoing in the dark. The seed of doubt, once planted, grows with a terrifying, tenacious speed. I became a silent observer, a detective in the ruins of my own marriage. Over the next week, my senses were on high alert. I noticed the new passcode on his phone, something he'd never felt the need for before. I noticed the texts that arrived with a soft asterisk ping in the dead of night, which he would dismiss with a grunt about Singapore markets or a server issue. I noticed the way his touch, when it came, had become distant, almost clinical, as if he were touching a piece of furniture. A week after the perfume incident, I was driving his Porsche Cayenne to the grocery store. My own car was in the shop. As I slid into the driver's seat, my hand brushed against the passenger seat fabric, and something tiny and sharp pricked my finger. I flinched and looked down. There, nestled deep in the gray wool, was a single, tiny, faux diamond earring. It was cheap, the kind sold in clusters at fast fashion stores. It sparkled in the California sun streaming through the windshield, a minuscule mocking star. This was no air freshener. This was evidence. My breath hitched. I picked it up, the tiny stud feeling like a shard of ice in my palm. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. A strange, cold calm settled over me. The emotional storm had passed, and in its wake was a frozen, focused clarity. He was cheating. The who and how were now just details to be uncovered. I am not a confrontational person by nature. The thought of a screaming match of tearful accusations made me feel physically ill. He would just lie again, more convincingly this time. He would have a story for the earring, a colleague's wife, a client's daughter. He would twist it, make me feel foolish and hysterical. No, if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. The supportive wife, the quiet partner, was gone. In her place was a strategist. The lawyer he'd always said I would have been brilliant at, had I not chosen the easier path of design, was finally waking up. That afternoon, while he was at the office, I went to work. I carried his iPad into my home studio, my sanctuary filled with my drawing tablets and half-finished projects, the remnants of the life I'd put on hold. He'd synced it to my laptop years ago for convenience, and in his arrogant carelessness, he'd never undone it. He saw my tech savviness as a cute trait, not a threat. My fingers flew across the keyboard, my heart hammering not with panic, but with a fierce, focused intensity. I bypassed simple things like social media. I went for the veins of gold, his iMessage, his email, his photo stream. And I found her. Her name was Chloe. According to his contacts, she was Chloe Etha Admin, 22 years old. Her face, splashed across a dozen photos he'd saved, was pretty in a vacant, overly filtered way. Big eyes, pouting lips, the kind of girl who looked like she'd been assembled from a TikTok trend. The messages were a nauseating mix of the banal and the intimate. Her, "Miss you already XXX." Him, "This board meeting is killing me. Thinking of you keeps me sane." Her, "Can't wait for Friday night, our little secret." Him, "Our secret is the only thing that makes my life bearable." Her, "You promised me those Laboutins lol." Him, "And you shall have them, my greedy girl. The Amex statement goes to the office, don't worry." I felt a physical revulsion, a cold sweat breaking out on my skin. The cliches were breathtaking. The younger woman, the expensive gifts, the portrayal of me, of his life, as a burden from which she provided escape. He was funding this affair, this fantasy, with the money asterisk our asterisk partnership had built. But it was his work email, the one he thought was so secure, that delivered the killing blow. He was bragging to his old college friend, David, a fellow finance bro. Mark, and the best part? The Ice Queen Isabella is completely oblivious. Thinks I'm her most loyal, devoted hound. If she had any idea I was banging her new admin and what I'm expensing it as. She'd fire my ass so fast my head would spin, but she's clueless, too busy counting her billions. I sat back in my chair, the blood roaring in my ears. The Ice Queen, Isabella Vance. The founder, CEO, and undisputed queen of Etha Industries. A self-made billionaire who had built her empire from a garage startup. To Mark, she was a deity to be worshipped and feared, and he was stealing from her. He was mocking her, and he was terrified of her. That's when the plan, fully formed and terrifying in its simplicity, bloomed in my mind. It was no longer just about me and Mark. He had dragged his powerful boss into this sordid mess. He had made her a victim, too, and he didn't even have the decency to know it. He feared Isabella Vance. So, I decided, it was time for Isabella Vance to meet the source of his fear. Finding Isabella Vance's private contact information was my first real test. It wasn't listed on Etha's website. It wasn't in any public directory. This was a woman who existed behind layers of assistance, security, and privilege. I used the only weapon I had, my talent. For 3 days, I became a ghost. I created a completely fake corporate identity, Veritas Consultancy, a boutique firm specializing in brand authenticity and crisis management. I designed a stunning, minimalist logo, built a sleek, one-page website, and even fabricated glowing testimonials from non-existent European CEOs. I used a VPN to mask my location and a burner phone number. My pitch was a work of art. I wrote an email highlighting the vulnerabilities of powerful figures in the digital age, the importance of preemptive reputation management. I was vague enough to be intriguing, professional enough to be credible. I sent it to an obscure but monitored executive inquiries email address I found buried in an old SEC filing. To my stunned disbelief, I received a reply within 12 hours. It was from a senior executive assistant, not Isabella herself, but it was a foot in the door. "Ms. Vance has a 10-minute window next Thursday at 3 p.m. at the Spire. Do not be late." The Spire, The most exclusive, notoriously discreet penthouse restaurant in the city. A place where power brokers met in hushed tones over $1,000 bottles of wine. My hands trembled. This was real. The days until Thursday passed in a blur. I assembled my dossier. I printed out the most damning texts between Mark and Chloe. I highlighted credit card statements showing hotel charges and the purchase of the Laobao tins, all billed to Etha as client entertainment. I saved the photo of the diamond earring, magnified. And most importantly, I included a screenshot of his email to David, the one calling Isabella the Ice Queen and detailing his fraud. I placed it all in a simple, elegant black portfolio. It felt heavy in my hands, weighted with the wreckage of my marriage. On Thursday, I dressed with the care of a soldier going into battle. I chose a sharp, navy blue Alexander McQueen trouser suit I hadn't worn in years, a relic from my more corporate freelance clients. I pulled my hair back into a severe, low chignon. I wore minimal makeup. I wanted to look like I belonged in her world, not like the betrayed, weeping wife I felt inside. The elevator at the Spire was silent and paneled in polished bronze. It opened directly into the restaurant, a breathtaking space of floor-to-ceiling windows, dark wood, and profound quiet. A host glided over, and I gave my fake name. Elena from Verita's consultancy. He led me to a corner table, and there she was. Isabella Vance was more striking in person than in any photograph. She was in her late 40s, with a sharp, intelligent face that bore the graceful evidence of her years. Her hair was a sleek, silver blonde bob. She wore a simple, exquisitely cut charcoal gray dress and no jewelry save for a single, flawless platinum watch. Her eyes, a piercing, cool blue, lifted from the tablet she was reading and settled on me. They held no warmth, only a frank, assessing curiosity. She did not smile. "You have 10 minutes," she said, her voice low and resonant. "This branding proposal had better be revolutionary." My mouth went dry. I could feel the carefully constructed facade of Elena from Verita's beginning to crack. I took a steadying breath and slid the black portfolio across the table. "My name is not important," I began, my voice thankfully steady. "But my real one is Elena Rhodes. I am Mark Rhodes's wife." Her eyebrows lifted a fraction of a millimeter, a flicker of annoyance. "I fail to see what your marital status has to do with my company's brand." "Open it," I said, my gaze unwavering. She sighed, a faint exhalation of impatience, and flipped the portfolio open. Her eyes scanned the first page, the texts. I watched her face, a masterclass in control. The initial annoyance didn't change, but it deepened, solidified into something harder. She turned the page. The expense reports, the hotel receipts. Her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Then she reached the email. The one where her VP, her loyal hound, called her the Ice Queen and detailed how he was stealing from her and fucking a subordinate right under her nose. A profound silence descended upon our table. The hum of the restaurant faded away. I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes, not the emotional hurt of betrayal, but the strategic implications. The liability, the insult to her intelligence, the sheer, staggering arrogance. She closed the portfolio slowly and looked up at me. The cool blue of her eyes was now the color of a glacial fjord. "What," she asked, her voice dangerously soft, "are you proposing we do about it?" The we was everything. "I'm proposing a partnership," I said, leaning forward. "He's betrayed us both. He's made a fool of us both. You have the power. I have the evidence and the intimate knowledge of his lies. Together, we can ensure his downfall isn't just personal. It will be professional. It will be poetic. It will be complete." Isabella Vance studied me for a long, long moment. She was no longer looking at a jilted wife or a branding consultant. She was looking at a potential asset. A slow, cold, and utterly terrifying smile touched her lips. It didn't reach her eyes. "All right, Elena," she said, my real name sounding like a contract being sealed. "You have my attention. Let's talk." She gestured to a waiter. "We'll have a bottle of the Krug Close Dambonnet and clear my schedule for the afternoon." My 10 minutes were up, but our partnership had just begun. The champagne arrived, a silent, golden bubble in a crystal flute placed before me by a waiter who moved with ghost-like efficiency. I stared at it, the effervescence a stark contrast to the leaden weight in my stomach. This was a toast to the end of my marriage, to the beginning of a war. Isabella took a slow, appreciative sip, her eyes never leaving me. The first thing we must establish, Alina, is that this is not about vengeance. Vengeance is emotional, messy, and ultimately hollow. I blinked. It feels rather personal from where I'm sitting. Of course it does, she said, not unkindly, but with the firmness of a surgeon stating a biological fact. But if we act on that emotion, we lose. Mark will spin it. He'll paint you as the hysterical, scorned wife. He'll claim you fabricated evidence. He might even garner sympathy. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. We will not give him that chance. We will be surgeons, not brawlers. We will remove him from my company, and from your life with such precision that he won't even realize he's bleeding until he's already bled out. The metaphor was chilling. This was the mind that had built Etha from the ground up. This was the Ice Queen Mark so foolishly mocked. I felt a shiver of fear, not for Mark, but of the force I had just unleashed. I was holding the leash of a tiger. What's the first cut? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The financials, she said without hesitation. The expense fraud is our scalpel. It's clean, undeniable, and a direct breach of his fiduciary duty. But we cannot move on it yet. If I launch an internal audit now, he'll be tipped off. He'll cover his tracks, and he'll know you're involved. So what do? We let him get comfortable. We let him get arrogant. A sly, almost predatory glint entered her eyes. In fact, we'll give him a promotion. I stared at her, certain I had misheard. ** promotion. A new title. Senior Vice President of Strategic Expansion. It's a meaningless, fabricated role, but it will come with a significant, very public bonus. It will feed his ego, make him feel invincible. He'll become careless. He'll spend more. He'll lie more boldly. And while he's preening, my most trusted external forensic accountant, a man who reports only to me, will begin a quiet, deep-dive audit of every expense he's ever filed, every project budget he's ever managed. The brilliance of it was diabolical. She wasn't just going to catch him. She was going to give him enough rope to hang himself in the most spectacular fashion possible. And Chloe, I asked, the name bitter on my tongue. Isabella's lip curled. The secretary, a pawn, and pawns are useful. We don't touch her, not yet. We watch her. We learn her. Is she in love with him? Is she just in it for the gifts? Does she have ambitions of her own? Understanding her motivations is key. She might just become our unwitting accomplice. I fell silent, absorbing the cold, logical flow of her plan. My own desire had been to scream, to throw his things out the window, to burn his world down in a glorious, emotional inferno. Isabella was proposing a controlled demolition, one where we evacuated the building first, and then pressed the button, watching it collapse in on itself in a perfect, dust-clouded heap. You're very quiet, Alina, she observed, having second thoughts. I looked at the portfolio on the table between us, the evidence of his betrayal. I thought of the cheap perfume, the sparkling earring, the mocking texts. I thought of the decade of my life I had invested in a lie. No, I said, my voice finding a new strength. No second thoughts, I'm in. Good, she finished her champagne. Then here is what you will do. You will go home. You will be the supportive, doting wife. You will congratulate him on his upcoming promotion when I announce it tomorrow. You will ask him about his day. You will listen to his lies and you will smile. Can you do that? The thought made my skin crawl. To pretend. To perform the role of the happy wife while my heart was a block of ice. But I looked into Isabella's cool, confident eyes and I knew I could. I had to. I can do that, I said. Excellent, she signaled for the check. I will be in touch. Do not contact me. I have your number. From now on, we are strangers who met for a business lunch. Our communication will be indirect. She stood smooth and elegant. One more thing, Alina. Your design work. The Veritas consultancy facade. It was impressively done. You have a keen mind. Wasted on freelance brochures, I suspect. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving me alone with the dregs of my champagne, and the terrifying, exhilarating knowledge that I had just enlisted in a war under the command of a genius. Walking back into the townhouse that evening felt like stepping onto a stage. The set was familiar, the sleek furniture, the panoramic view, the lingering scent of my own lilies, but my role had changed irrevocably. I was no longer the lead. I was an understudy playing a part, waiting for the real actor to show up so I could study his performance. Mark arrived home earlier than usual, a buoyant energy in his step. He dropped his briefcase and swept me into a hug, a genuine, spontaneous gesture he hadn't made in months. The scent of his cologne, once so comforting, now made my stomach clench. "Lena, you will not believe the day I've had." I forced my body to relax in his arms, forced a smile onto my face. "Oh, tell me about it." My voice sounded light, curious. I was amazed at my own acting. "Isabella called me into her office," he said, releasing me, his eyes shining with triumph. "The Etha Horizon project, the one I've been killing myself on. She said my strategic vision was revolutionary. She's creating a new senior role for me, Senior VP of Strategic Expansion. It comes with a 20% bump and a stock option package that's, well, it's insane." He puffed out his chest, waiting for my reaction. I felt a cold fury twist inside me. This was Isabella's first move, the bait, and he was swallowing it whole. "Mark, that's incredible," I exclaimed, laying my hands on his shoulders. "I'm so proud of you." I leaned in and kissed his cheek, the act feeling like a desecration. "All your hard work is finally paying off. We have to celebrate." His smile was brilliant, smug. "It is, isn't it? I told you, babe, I told you I'd get us here." The us was a knife twist. There was no us in his success. There was only him. Over dinner, I could barely eat. He talked and talked. He outlined his vision for his new role, a stream of corporate buzzwords that meant nothing. He talked about the respect in Isabella's eyes, the envy of his colleagues. He was floating on a cloud of his own perceived brilliance, completely oblivious to the trapdoor that had just been sprung beneath his feet. I watched him, this man I had loved, and I saw a stranger. A vain, arrogant, foolish stranger. The promotion had erased any lingering caution. He was the king of the world. Later, as he slept, his phone buzzed on his nightstand. A text lit up the screen. It was from Chloe. "So, did you tell the wifey? Is she throwing you a parade? LOL." I lay in the darkness, my eyes wide open. The performance was exhausting. But seeing that text, the casual cruelty of it, fortified my resolve. I was not just playing a part for Isabella. I was playing it for myself, for the woman I used to be. The next few weeks were a masterclass in duplicity. I became the perfect corporate wife. I hosted a dinner party for his colleagues, laughing at their jokes, praising Mark's brilliance. I listened to him fret about board dynamics and offered soothing, empty platitudes. I even went shopping for a new dress for the Etha annual gala, an event I had been dreading for months, but which now represented a crucial intelligence-gathering opportunity. All the while, I was Isabella's silent informant. Our indirect communication was a thing of beauty. I would drop a seemingly innocent comment to Mark. "Oh, you're working with the Singapore team again? That must be so stressful with the time difference." A day later, an encrypted file would appear in a hidden cloud folder Isabella had set up for me. It would contain notes from her forensic accountant, cross-referencing Mark's client dinners in San Francisco with receipts from romantic restaurants, all on nights he'd claimed to be on calls with Singapore. The noose was tightening, stitch by invisible stitch. The Etha annual gala was the social event of the tech calendar. Held at the De Young Museum, it was a sea of black tie, cocktail dresses, and obscene wealth. I wore a deep emerald green gown, a color I had chosen for its confidence. It was my armor. Mark was in his element, shaking hands, clapping backs, basking in the glow of his new title. He introduced me to countless people, his wonderful wife, Elena, a trophy on his arm. I smiled, I shook hands, I made small talk. But my eyes were constantly scanning the crowd, looking for one person. I found her near a monumental sculpture, holding a glass of champagne, holding court. Isabella Vance. She was wearing a stunning, blood-red gown, a slash of color in the monochrome room. Our eyes met across the crowd. There was no nod, no smile, just a flicker of recognition, a silent confirmation that the operation was proceeding. Then I saw her, Chloe. She was with a group of junior staffers, looking young and slightly overwhelmed in a sparkly, inappropriate dress. She was staring at Mark with a proprietary, hungry look that made my skin crawl. This was my chance. The pawn was on the board. I waited for Mark to be drawn into a conversation with a group of investors. Then I made my move. I walked casually towards the group of junior staff, picking up a glass of champagne from a passing tray. "Hello," I said, my voice warm and friendly. "You all look like you're having more fun than the stuffed shirts over there." They laughed, a little nervously. Chloe's eyes widened slightly as she recognized me. "I'm Alina, Mark's wife," I said, extending my hand to her first. "You must be Chloe. Mark has mentioned you. He says you're the most efficient admin he's ever had. He'd be lost without you." I poured on the charm, watching her carefully. She blushed, a mixture of pleasure and guilt. "Oh, thank you, Mrs. Rhodes. He's a great boss." "Please call me Alina," I said, leaning in conspiratorially. "And between us, I think he's a bit of a nightmare to work for. So demanding. I don't know how you keep him organized." It was the perfect key. It unlocked her. "You have no idea," she confided, her voice dropping. "The late-night requests, the last-minute changes, and the personal errands." She rolled her eyes, but there was a boastful edge to it. "Just last week, I had to return a pair of shoes for him, some designer heels that didn't fit his niece." The lie was so transparent it was almost funny. The Laubautins. She was returning the Laubautins he'd bought asterisk for her asterisk. "How tedious for you," I sympathized, my smile never wavering. "Well, I for one am grateful. It means he bothers you and not me with all that nonsense." I gave a light, tinkling laugh. "If you ever need a break from him, let me know. We can grab a coffee and complain about our mutual burden." Her eyes lit up. The wife of the powerful SVP, offering her an alliance. This was a status boost she couldn't have dreamed of. "I'd love that," she said, beaming. "Excellent." I squeezed her arm gently. "It was lovely to meet you all. Enjoy the party." I drifted away, my heart pounding. The hook was set. I had established contact. I had made her feel seen, important, and most crucially, I had given her an outlet to complain about Mark. An outlet she would surely use. Later that night, as Mark snored beside me, drunk on champagne and self-congratulation, I sent a single, coded message to the secure cloud folder. "The pawn has been engaged. The coffee invitation is pending, awaiting further instructions." The game was afoot, and in the shadows, Isabella Vance and I were moving our pieces into place for the next, more devastating move. The coffee shop was my idea. Not one of the sleek, minimalist places Mark and his ilk frequented, but a cozy, slightly shabby bookshop cafe tucked away on a side street. It smelled of old paper, roasted beans, and quiet desperation. The perfect place for a confession. I arrived first, choosing a worn velvet armchair in a corner, my back to the wall. I wore simple jeans and a sweater, a deliberate contrast to the emerald armor of the gala. I needed to be approachable, relatable, a potential friend. When Chloe pushed open the door, the bell jingling frantically, she looked younger than she had at the party. Dressed in a trendy, oversized blazer and jeans, she seemed like a child playing dress-up. Her eyes scanned the room, wide and slightly nervous, before landing on me. She offered a tentative wave and scurried over. "Alina, hi, this place is so cute," she said, sliding into the armchair opposite me, her oversized tote bag landing with a thud. "It's my sanctuary," I said with a warm smile. "No one here cares what you're working on or how much your stock options are worth. They just care if you dog-ear the pages." I gestured to the bookshelves. "It's real." Her smile was genuine this time. "Yeah, it's a lot." The barista took our orders. A latte for her, a simple black tea for me. I let the silence hang for a moment, not uncomfortably, but thoughtfully. "So," I began, stirring my tea. "You survived the gala. It can be a bit of a circus, can't it?" "Oh my God, yes," she exhaled, leaning forward. "All those people trying so hard to look important, It's exhausting. Tell me about it. I've been doing it for 10 years and I still feel like I'm wearing a costume. This was a risk, a crack in the perfect wife facade. I watched her closely. She seized the opening. Really, but you seem so, at home with it all, with Mark and everything. I gave a soft, weary laugh, the one I had practiced in the mirror. Appearances can be deceiving, Chloe. Being married to a man like Mark, it's like being the support staff for a perpetual motion machine. His ambitions, his stresses, his ego, it becomes your entire life. I looked down into my cup. Sometimes I wonder what happened to the man I married, the one who wanted to build a life with me, not just a career for himself. I was laying the bait, piece by delicate piece. Sympathy, a shared burden, the illusion of female solidarity. Her face softened with a flicker of something that wasn't quite pity, but understanding. He is really demanding. At work, I mean. The late-night emails, the last-minute presentations. He has these moods. Does he? I asked, my voice laced with gentle concern. He used to be so even-keeled, but lately, the stress seems to be getting to him. He's been so secretive, almost paranoid. He's even started password protecting his personal phone, can you believe it, after 10 years of marriage? I shook my head, a sad smile on my face. I suppose he thinks I'm too dim to notice. Her eyes darted away for a fraction of a second. A tell, she knew about the password. She was the reason for it. He's probably just swamped with the new role, she offered weakly. Probably, I agreed too quickly. I let the subject hang, a ghost at our table. I then shifted gears, becoming bright and conspiratorial. Enough about my tedium. What about you? A young, beautiful woman in the city. There must be more to your life than fetching Mark's dry cleaning. I saw the conflict in her eyes. The desire to boast, to confirm her special status, warring with the need for secrecy. Oh, you know, she said, playing with the sleeve of her coffee cup. It's fun, I date a bit. Anyone special? I asked, my tone light and gossipy. She hesitated. There's someone, he's older, powerful, it's complicated. Ah, I said, nodding as if I understood a great mystery. The complicated ones are always the most exciting, aren't they? Until they're not. I leaned in. A word of unsolicited advice from someone who's been there. Just make sure his complications don't become your problems. Powerful men have a way of making promises that sometimes don't align with reality. I was speaking in code, but I could see the words landing. She was thinking of the Laubautins, the fancy dinners, the whispered promises of a future I was sure he was selling her. He's very generous, she said, a defensive note creeping into her voice. I'm sure he is, I soothed. But is he reliable? Is he honest? When a man is secretive, Chloe, it's rarely to protect you. It's to protect himself. The final nail. I could see the doubt, a tiny, poisonous seed taking root in her mind. She was starting to see Mark not as a romantic, powerful lover, but as a potential liability. We finished our coffee with lighter talk about movies and music. When we parted on the sidewalk with a hug that felt, to my surprise, genuinely warm on her part, I knew the first phase was complete. I had not gathered any new evidence. I had not extracted a confession. But I had done something far more valuable. I had become her confidant. I had positioned myself as the wise, older woman who understood the trials of dealing with a man like Mark. I had validated her frustrations and ever so gently poisoned the well of her admiration for him. As I walked away, I sent a single-line update to the secure cloud folder. The seed of doubt is planted. The soil is fertile, awaiting the next rain. Isabella's response came an hour later, as cryptic and efficient as ever. It was a link to a financial news article about the risks of corporate embezzlement. The message was clear. While I was playing psychological games, she was building an unassailable fortress of facts. The two-pronged attack was underway. The noose was no longer just financial. It was now exquisitely personal. The rain came sooner than expected. A few days after our coffee, Chloe texted me. The tone was dramatically different from her gala self. Chloe, Elena, can we talk? I think I messed up. My heart thumped a steady, cold rhythm against my ribs. This was it. The pawn was moving into position. We met at the same bookshop cafe. This time, she was already there, her face pale, a half-finished latte turning cold in front of her. She looked like she hadn't slept. "I think he's lying to me," she blurted out the moment I sat down, her voice trembling. I kept my face a mask of calm concern. "Oh, Chloe, what's happened?" "It's the shoes," she whispered, her eyes welling with tears. "The Laubautins. He told me he bought them with his bonus. But I was organizing his corporate Amex statements for the audit. He asked me to help him get his expenses in order for the new role, and I saw the charge. He expensed them. He told the company they were a gift for a client from Japan." The audit. Isabella's meaningless promotion was already yielding dividends. Mark, in his arrogance, had tasked his mistress with organizing the very evidence that would convict him. I placed my hand over hers. "Oh, my dear, I'm so sorry." "It's not just that," she cried, a single tear tracing a path through her perfect makeup. "He promised me. He said once this big project was over, he'd leave you. He said you were a drain, that you didn't understand him, that you were holding him back. He said you were basically just a gold digger who'd latched onto him before he was successful." Each word was a shard of glass, but I felt no new pain, only a cold, clarifying fury. I absorbed the insults, storing them as fuel. "Chloe," I said, my voice low and steady, "look at me. You are not the first woman to be lied to by a powerful man. His words are a script. I've heard my own version of it for years." I squeezed her hand. "But you have something I never had at the beginning. Proof." She looked at me, confused. "Proof?" "The expense reports, the texts, the recordings." "Recordings?" "This is what these men do, Chloe. They create their own reality with lies. The only way to protect yourself is to document everything. If he's lying about the shoes, what else is he lying about? His divorce timeline? His feelings for you? If things go sour, he will throw you under the bus to save his career. You need a shield." I was no longer just a sympathetic friend. I was a strategist, arming a fellow soldier. "You mean, record him?" she asked, her voice hushed with a mixture of fear and excitement. "For your own protection," I emphasized. "If he ever turns on you, you'll have his own words to defend yourself. Get him to talk about the expenses. Get him to repeat his promises. Save every text, every email. Think of it as insurance." I saw the idea take root. It wasn't about bringing Mark down. In her mind, it was about securing her own position. It was the perfect motivation. "I can do that," she said, a new, hard glint in her eye. The wounded bird was gone, replaced by a scrappy survivor. "He talks a lot when he's relaxed." "Then be a good listener," I said softly. The trap was now fully formed. We had turned his mistress into our most effective intelligence asset. Chloe, armed with her smartphone and a newfound sense of self-preservation, began to feed us a stream of damning evidence. The encrypted cloud folder began to swell with files. Audio recordings of Mark bragging about how he was fooling the old bat Isabella. Videos, taken stealthily at dinner, of him detailing his schemes for inflating project budgets. Texts where he explicitly promised Chloe a future, slandering me in the most vicious terms. Isabella and I never spoke of the personal venom, the intimate betrayals. Our communications remained strictly clinical. Isabella's note. Audio file 7B confirms the Singapore budget manipulation. The forensics team is correlating. My reply. Text string 42 details the client gift narrative for the jewelry purchase, aligned with Amex charge 1183. We were dissecting the corpse of my marriage with the dispassionate efficiency of pathologists. And with every new piece of evidence, the moment of final reckoning drew nearer. The stage was being set for a fall of epic and very public proportions. The air in our townhouse became thick with a tension only I could feel. To Mark, it was the scent of victory. To me, it was the ozone charge before a lightning strike. He was now Senior Vice President of Strategic Expansion, a title so hollow it echoed, but he preened under its weight. His carelessness, as Isabella had predicted, blossomed into full-blown arrogance. He began taking client meetings at the most exclusive resorts in Napa, expenses filed under strategic relationship building. He bought Chloe a diamond bracelet, expensing it as corporate commemorative jewelry. He was a child gorging himself in a candy store, convinced he was too clever to ever be caught. My performance as the doting wife reached Oscar-worthy levels. I packed his bags for his business trip to Sonoma, placing a loving note atop his folded shirts. I smiled as he kissed me goodbye, his phone already buzzing with a text from Chloe. I stood at the door, waving, until his Porsche disappeared around the corner. The moment he was gone, the smile vanished from my face. I felt no sadness, only a cold, focused anticipation. I went to my studio and opened the Secure Cloud folder. There was a new message from Isabella, its subject line a single, chilling word: tomorrow. The message was brief. Mark, in his newfound hubris, had overstepped catastrophically. He had authorized a massive, unauthorized payment to a shell company in the Cayman Islands, a company owned by his friend David. It was a brazen attempt to siphon off a six-figure sum, disguised as a vendor payment for a non-existent market analysis. Isabella's automated financial flags had caught it instantly. This was no longer just about padded expense reports. This was grand larceny. It was the final, irrefutable proof she needed to not only fire him, but to see him prosecuted. The plan was set. The following day, during the quarterly board of directors meeting, Isabella would summon him. The trap was no longer a hidden snare. It was a guillotine being polished for a public execution. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the city lights, a queen on the eve of a revolution. I thought of the last 10 years, the struggles, the whispered dreams in a dark apartment, the slow, insidious erosion of it all. There was no rage left. It had been refined into something purer, harder: resolve. The Etha Industries boardroom was a temple of power. A massive oval table of polished obsidian reflected the cool, recessed lighting. Floor to ceiling, windows offered a god's eye view of the city. I stood beside Isabella just outside the heavy double doors. I was wearing the same navy blue trouser suit I had worn to our first meeting at the Spire. My armor. "You are ready?" Isabella asked, her voice calm. She looked every inch the Queen Regent in a severe black dress. "I was born ready," I replied, and for the first time I truly believed it. Inside, the 12 members of the board were seated, a collection of the most powerful and weathered faces in Silicon Valley. They looked up, curious, as we entered. Mark was already there, seated near the head of the table, looking smug and self-important. His smile faltered for a second when he saw me, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. "Isabella, Elena, what's this about?" he asked, his tone a clumsy mix of charm and annoyance. Isabella ignored him. She walked to the head of the table and placed her tablet down with a soft, definitive click. "Gentlemen," she began, her voice cutting through the room like a scalpel. "Thank you for your time today. A slight change to the agenda. We have a matter of corporate security to address, a case of profound betrayal, fraud, and breathtaking stupidity." Mark's face went pale. "Isabella, Be silent, Mark," she said, without even looking at him. Her gaze swept the room. "For the past several months, I have been conducting a forensic audit of the expenses and financial authorizations of Senior Vice President Mark Rhodes." She began to lay it out, piece by devastating piece. The hotel receipts, the Laubautins, the diamond bracelet. She displayed them on the large screen behind her, Mark's own corporate Amex statements damning him. The board members shifted in their seats, their expressions turning from curiosity to grim fascination. "This is outrageous," Mark spluttered, standing up. "This is a witch hunt, my wife." He shot a venomous look at me. "She's been feeding you lies. She's a jealous, hysterical woman." Isabella finally turned her glacial gaze upon him. "Your wife, Mr. Rhodes, is not the source of this information. She is, however, a material witness to your character." She paused, letting the silence hang. "But you are correct. This evidence is circumstantial, which is why we have this." She tapped her tablet, and Mark's voice, slick with conceit, filled the room. "The Ice Queen is completely oblivious. If she had any idea I was banging her new admin and what I'm expensing it as, she'd fire my ass so fast." The blood drained from Mark's face. He looked like a man who had just stepped into an open elevator shaft. Isabella played more, his voice bragging to Chloe about the shell company. "It's foolproof, baby. David sets up the company, I authorize the payment, we split it. It's a bonus for putting up with that hag Isabella." The room was utterly silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the plush carpet. Then Isabella nodded to me. It was my turn. I took a small step forward, my voice clear and steady, echoing in the mortified silence. "For 10 years, I believed in you, Mark. I supported you. I loved you. You used my love as a weapon against me. You stole from the company that gave you everything. You lied to and stole from the woman who believed in your talent." I looked at Isabella, then back at him. "But your greatest mistake was underestimating both of us." I had no more words for him. I turned my back, a gesture of finality more powerful than any scream. Isabella delivered the final blow. "Mark Rhodes, you are terminated, effective immediately, for gross misconduct, misappropriation of corporate funds, and fraud. All your assets, including your stock options, are frozen pending litigation. Security." The doors opened. 2 uniformed guards entered. Mark seemed to shrink, his expensive suit suddenly looking like a costume on a broken man. "You can't! Alina, please." He was begging me. The man who had called me a drain, a gold digger, a hysterical woman, was now begging me for mercy. I did not even turn around. I kept my eyes on the city skyline, my back straight, as the guards escorted my husband from the room, his career and his freedom in ruins. The fallout was swift and merciless. The divorce was the easiest legal battle my lawyer had ever fought. With the evidence provided by Isabella, Mark had no leverage. He signed the papers in a daze, agreeing to terms that left him with nothing but the clothes on his back and the mountain of legal debt he now faced. The embezzlement charges ensured he would be a pariah, unhirable in any industry. I heard through the grapevine he was living in a studio apartment, appealing his conviction. Chloe was handled with surgical efficiency. Isabella provided her with a generous severance package and a glowing, if vague, letter of recommendation on the condition she relocate to the East Coast and never speak of the affair again. The pawn was removed from the board, compensated, and forgotten. A month after the boardroom coup, Isabella summoned me to her office, not the corporate one, but her private penthouse study. The view was even more breathtaking than the boardrooms. She handed me a glass of expensive scotch. We didn't toast. We simply drank, the silence a comfortable acknowledgement of what we had accomplished. "The company is healthier without the parasite," she stated. "The board is suitably chastised." I nodded, and I am free. She studied me over the rim of her glass. "What will you do with your freedom, Alina? Go back to your little hobby." There was no malice in the question, only a sharp curiosity. "I was thinking," I said, meeting her gaze, "that Veritas consultancy had a rather compelling business model. Brand authenticity, crisis management. It seems there's a market for it." A genuine smile, the first I had ever seen from her, touched Isabella Vance's lips. It transformed her face. "I was hoping you'd say that. I have a proposal, a joint venture, 60-40. You run the creative and strategic side. I handle the clients and the capital, we'll call it Chronicle Consulting." My heart swelled. It wasn't an offer of pity or payment. It was an offer of partnership, a real one. "I accept," I said. That was a year ago. Today, I sit in my own office, with my name on the door. Alina Rhodes, partner. Chronicle Consulting is thriving. We specialize in helping companies and the occasional powerful individual navigate crises, often by uncovering the truths they are unwilling to see themselves. Our success is built on a foundation of ruthless discretion and strategic brilliance, a reputation forged in the fire of my own destruction. I am no longer the woman in the gilded cage. I am the architect of my own life. The betrayal, the pain, the cold fury, they are not scars. They are the steel that reforged me. Sometimes, late at night, I think of Mark, not with hatred, but with a distant, almost anthropological curiosity. He was the catalyst, the necessary disaster that forced me to become who I was always meant to be. And as I look out at the city, the same view I once stared at with such loneliness, I feel a profound sense of peace. My chronicle of revenge is complete, but my story, my own story, is just beginning. And it is more powerful than I ever dreamed.